randomly appear.
On this episode, that's apparently not sponsored by Prime, we'll be talking about Omega because apparently Omega did something quite noteworthy recently. Also in this show, we'll be pitting three of the most hyped watches in the budget category in 2022. And finally, in your viewer comments, we'll be discussing and we'll be walking the plank one of the most famous people in the world and in the history of this show, Shakira. So here's the thing. Apparently, I was able to steal many of you from watching your respectable YouTube watch content creators to watch my PRX video. And you have no one to blame for that but yourself, because you're actually supporting a degenerate shipwreck of a channel like this. But now that you're here, I'm forced to make more PRX content. Again, no one to blame but you, because that's what this channel is about. We're just really improvising things on the fly and winging it all the time. So I went to my drawer in an effort to make more PRX content. And you know what? I was surprised. I was actually in possession of three of the most hyped watches in the budget category last year, which is the Quartz PRX, the Moonswatch from Swatch, and the Seiko 5 GMT. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to see which one of the three is the most budget friendly, which one is the most wearable, and finally, which one of these three actually made much more wrist time than it should be. If you've been living under a rock, under the sea, beside a pineapple and a spongy yellow friend, I need to point out to you that this Tissot PRX is one of the hottest watches right now. It's got the perfect combination of class, heritage, and attainability that people are looking for. There's also a number of variants and configurations to choose from, and this sits at the lower end of that range. Playing in somewhat the same field is the most talked about watch of last year, the Moonswatch from Omega and Swatch. This also sits at the lower end of the value proposition for a whole totally different reason. It's got the oohs and the ahs for watch fans to enjoy, but the quality and material build leaves much to be desired. But this is a unique opportunity to really show your watch fandom, and it's got a much wider range choice against the three. The last contender is the Seiko 5 Sports GMT. This is the most useful of the three and likely the one that's most durable as well. There's only a handful of styles to choose from, but this might just be all the style you need for any situation you're in. Oh yeah, it's an automatic too, for all you nerdy watch pirates out there looking for your daily mechanical fix. Let's now get them in this 6¼ inch wrist and check out how they wear. The PRX wears very nicely on the bracelet with all of the dazzling light play from those narrow polished chamfers and large brush facets. You can definitely pull this off both on a casual or formal setting. This kind of versatility will lack on the Moonswatch. I know James Bond wore one of these with a suit, but his ravishing good looks could not overcome the failure of that combo. This watch is mostly great when paired with jeans or shorts, or even when you're wearing shorts on your jeans if that's what floats your boat. You also tend to run out of Velcro if you have smaller wrists like mine. The last is the winner of this round, the Seiko 5 GMT. It's got the best comfort of the three with its narrow links, and it's got the looks that can work well in most instances. I like the heft of the steel and mechanical movement because you know, I'm one of those nerdy watch pirates. For the next round, we'll check out the strap versatility. Playing around with straps is a borderline unhealthy habit of mine, and all three makes a good case. Arguably the best strap of the three is the Moonswatch with its lovely printing and gorgeous texture. I tried many times to use this on other watches, but this red plastic loop just sticks out like an overgrown pimple. But that's more my fault for choosing the Mars model. What seemed to be an appealing decision back in the time is now a strap crisis situation. Putting it on this channel favorite Artem Strap normally would delight this pirate's heart, but because of this vibrant red case, the combination is overwhelmingly mediocre. Trying on a light strap seemed like a good idea, but the same clash of design is apparent. On a different, more subdued Moonswatch color, this strap may have worked perfectly, but I'm too poor to buy another one and too stubborn not to try and make this thing work. And in those few attempts, I am definitely damaging the lug holes, a side effect of this bioceramic case. So, this Moonswatch will likely remain stock while I divert my attention to the Seiko 5 Sports GMT. Despite having an attention-grabbing dial, this watch flaunts its reputation of being a strap monster. This automatic GMT works very well with most dark straps, and the orange stitching on this one just blends beautifully with the dial and bezel. The drilled lug holes also makes for a very convenient feature for quick band changes. So now you can freely swap straps with varying surfaces to spice up this watch's many polished facets. The more straps I try this thing on, the more it wins this category. With the sheer amount of possibilities to reward your efforts, the enjoyment also increases. It can become a problem unto itself as you realize you're buying more straps than you need. But that beats buying more watches for the same pursuit. But if reasonableness wins you over, the original bracelet might just be all you need to keep you happy. As far as bracelets go, the PRX is near synonymous with its bracelet design. However, because of its integrated bracelet design, the amount of straps you can pair with the PRX is very limited. This strap from Tissot is a great quality alternative, but it will cost a premium. You can get 3 to 4 straps on other watches to get one of these for the PRX. But like what I said before, it's worth the price to get, as this strap and bracelet set is more than enough for almost any occasion. So although I'd like to declare the Seiko GMT as the winner of the strap changes, the PRX was able to bring that joy to me with just 2 configurations. And that, I think, is more important to consider, especially when we're listing up the amounts you spend on your wrist candy. Next would be the aesthetic value of these 3 budget darlings. For what it's worth, the Moonswatch is really nicely designed and worthy to own. But to me, the Velcro strap steals the show as its pleasing texture and crisp prints endears this piece visually. The case is also feature heavy with the dial sporting both Omega and Swatch elements. There's more to enjoy from the back as well, which is different from each version. This watch is designed to be collected and it really entices you to no end. That is a very stark contrast to the Seiko 5 Sports GMT. Much of the parts found on this Japanese watch is geared towards function and usability. It does have a lot of polished surfaces that lends to the bezel's time delineation and overall bling factor. Also worth noting is that all of these curved surfaces lends to the fluidity of its design. It looks more organic. Considering that this lacks a battery, the sense of semi-self-sufficiency makes it even more alive, for a lack of a better term. That is a direct opposite of the PRX Quartz. Not only does this have a battery, but it also has those sharp and straight edges that really lends to the neo-industrial look of this Tissot. This really feels like a jewelry to be worn on the wrist. It's not trying to be part of your wrist. That really brings out the Swiss influence from the PRX, a sort of refinement that's hard to beat yet more attainable than what Seiko has to offer here. While the GMT has about the same refinements for $100 less, the PRX comes off victorious. Lastly, let's find some semblance of usefulness from these vain devices. If this loom shot is of any indication, the Seiko 5 GMT is the most useful of the bunch. It can be read in the dark and can track up to 3 time zones. It's also likely going to outlast the other 2 watches. The Moonswatch is a chronograph that can be used to time your eggs when cooking and the elapsed time when your wife last asked you to wash the dishes. It can also be used to make you realize how slow time flies when you're not having fun doing your groceries. The PRX though, well, it just sits on my wrist as I do all of the work. Seiko wins this round once again. As with most Seikos, the GMT is built to accomplish its purpose. I still hate that non-ratcheting bezel though. But notice that I wasn't keeping score. Even though there's a lot going for the Seiko GMT, the PRX still got the most use from me personally. The Moonswatch ultimately found a home on my wife's wrist and frequently gets tossed over her pile of Swarovskis and Pandoras. Although the PRX lost a lot to the Seiko GMT, it ultimately won where it counted the most, the heart of this buccaneer. So, in the end, it's the Tissot Quartz PRX that garnered the most wrist time for me and my son. Now, is that the pot? Again, shipwreck of a show. Now, the Tissot Quartz PRX really sits at the Goldilocks spot of the most affordable and wearable of the three, at least for me. But for you, it could be any of the three. It could be the Moonswatch, or it could be the Seiko 5 GMT Sports that's your go-to watch on a budget. Or you could be like me as well, in the same predicament that you are unwittingly owning all three of them because that's what they are. Budget, hype pieces that you can actually own, even all three. Now, only in this hobby you could find a piece of a mechanism like a balance spring used as the hype piece for the next product release, such as what Omega did in the last 2 weeks. Now, you can imagine that as an equivalent of using a spark plug as the talking point for your next car. Well, actually, can you imagine that if you use, like, say, an arc reactor as spark plug? Well, that is something. Or maybe let's do it. Let's talk about it this way. It's an equivalent of making a device, a transmitter that turns your device into a wireless power source. They're actually doing that already? Oh, okay. How about this? Maybe it's the equivalent of a revolutionary variant of hop that you could use in your beer to make it taste great, and at the same time, you to lose that pirate gut that you have for like 30 years. What about that? Nobody's done that yet, for all I know. Let me know if you found that. Comment down below. But that's what Omega did. They used a part of technology to push forward the innovations for the rest of its collection. But you know what? They've been doing that for years, and they seem to know that there's a formula behind it, and here's how they did it. Omega has a history of taking existing technology and improve on them to publicize the brand's ability in showmaking. I mean, watchmaking. This is clear even before Omega was named the O brand. In 1892, the brand Brothers created the first mid repeater for the wrist, where it is previously seen only on pocket watches. 2 years later, the 19-line caliber was born. This was then extremely accurate, its components are interchangeable and can be replaced without modification of the watchmaker. And both the winding and time setting are all accessed in the same crown. This was called the Ultimate or Omega caliber. This revolutionized how watches were manufactured and was so successful that Omega became the brand's name. A number of decades later, Omega merged with a few watch companies to ensure their survival during the Great Depression. While many brands died out, Omega picked up on another existing technology, the bumper automatic caliber. This was originally created by John Hardwood to make his watch cases, strangely unrelated to the function, more robust against dirt and mud. Omega popularized these types of watches from the 30s through the 50s. In 1932, the quest for a better sealed case gave birth to the first commercially available diver's watch, the Marine. This watch used a double case design to ensure that the movement inside is protected against the elements. Because, you know, if one protection is not enough, slip on another for good measure. In 1937, the Omega Medicus became the darling of doctors in the medical field, as its sweeping central seconds hand made it very useful for checking a person's pulse rate. 10 years later, Omega hit another milestone by incorporating another horological contraption in a wristwatch, the Tourbillon. This was not made available for the public, but this contributed to watch technology that we still see today. We can see a definite pattern from Omega here. When a new technology comes along, Omega takes that tech and tries to move it forward to a seemingly better version. Tissot made the first anti-magnetic wristwatch, for example, by using parts that were unaffected by magnetism. 27 years later, Omega significantly upgraded that magnetic resistance with its 1000 Gauss Railmaster. This uses a Faraday cage around its CK2914 caliber. When the quartz revolution came around in the 70s, Omega jumped in the bandwagon and proved that they can do better by making the most accurate quartz wristwatch, the Mega Quartz. This one is accurate to 0.002 seconds per day. When the escapement was getting old, Omega found a way to make it more accurate. In 1999, George Daniel and Omega created a coaxial escapement that has much less surface contact, improving performance. Other brands continue to step up with innovations such as Ulysse Nardin when it created the world's first silicone hairspring, but it was far less accessible to the public. Omega changed that by, making it more available, relatively, within many of its product range. This also brings us back full circle to what Tissot did decades earlier, as Omega ditched the iron cage and manufactured many of the movement parts like the silicone hairspring as anti-magnetic, like Tissot. This produced the Aquaterra that had a 15,000 Gauss resistance in 2013. This, of course, was referenced by the latest innovation by Omega, the Spirit technology that was released a few days ago. One can argue that Omega and much of the watch brands out there are not releasing anything new or groundbreaking recently, but one cannot deny either that Omega is certainly not satisfied at just taking existing tech and use it within their own products. We need Omega to keep this spirit of innovation alive. It's one of the areas in horology that is as constant as Rolex persistence in making gradual and minuscule changes. This is actually one of the strongest cases for Omega as being an alternative or better choice than Rolex. While the former is often viewed as more valuable, which in many cases is true, Omega, technology and innovation-wise, has done better and more often. And that is actually good for every watch fan, even if they are not buying Omega brand watches. Because when Omega does better, they take horology along with them. So if you're tired of complaining that your watch brands are starting to look stale and your microbrands started to look the same, then Omega is here to propose to you new ways of pushing watch technology forward. They've got the resources, and they're using all of them as part of their blueprint for innovation. And now it's time for your viewer comments. Raduldo says, what basic Casioak is missing to make it the best G-Shock tier ever is the loom and solar powered, and of course the price not to change too drastically. That's it. Okay, maybe Rodoldo is kind of asking too much here, but in fact they're actually able to do this already, minus the loom. They're able to release the GAB 2100 that has the tough solar and the Bluetooth connectivity, and the price jump isn't that crazy, and it's not that close either for you to not consider the regular stock GA 2100. I think that's what G-Shock is able to successfully step you over to the next tier, helping you make that baby step to climb up the ladder. But adding loom is just going to increase the price even more. So by doing that, then it would disqualify anything that Ridaldo wanted to see here. Bogrot69 says, I bought a Casioak back when it was first released in North America. When I saw it in person, it just didn't grab me. I sold it and went to the GA2000 instead. I like the compatibility with regular watch straps without the needs for adapters, and the larger buttons were a plus as well. I do like the metal version of the Casioak, however, and I have a few G steels also. That's what he's saying. That's also a very good point. We have to remember what Bogrot says here is the GA2000 was the first foray of G-Shock using the carbon core guard technology, and that has been introduced to many of G-Shock's models, And quite frankly, that is a game changer for many of them because it was lightweight and durable, and they were able to be more flexible when it comes to introducing crazier designs. But also, another great feature of the GA2000 is that you can swap bands, and that's an intentional design choice by G-Shock to promote the customizability of the GA2000, and this is what introduced many of those technologies, the quick release spring bars, although it's already being used in many watches. But for G-Shocks, this is something that they aggressively promoted for that watch line, the 2000, the GA2000 line, and that's actually a really solid choice from Bogra. Thank you. Paprice says, I'm a diehard G-Shock fan, and I've never gotten into the 2100 series. Something about them is too bland and conservative. What's wrong with me? They're so popular. Well, let me put on my let me put on my psychiatrist. Is it a psychiatrist or psychologist? Whatever. Hat here. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with you, Paprice. There's nothing wrong with not going with the flow or what's popular. These Casioaks are popular for a reason because it hits the right notes and the right preferences of people, or at least most people out there. You're not what most people are. Sad to say, or maybe happy to say. You know, be happy of your uniqueness and of your taste. Be proud that you have a different taste, and there's nothing wrong if you don't like the Casio. You can still stick to the other G-Shocks like what you said. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Don't worry. You don't need a therapist or you don't need medication for that. Next is DZEJWIJV says, this watch would be perfect without the second hand. Okay, actually that's an interesting idea. So here it is. The Tissot PRX without the second hand. Quite easy to do. But let's make it a step forward. What about we put a 6 o'clock seconds hand? There you go, 6 o'clock subdial. What do you think? Is this something that you would like to see from the Tissot PRX? Tissot, you got my number. Just let me know. Jeff Sansom says, I actually read your description, but I'm not going to quote your quote, LOL. I really enjoyed your review, your video tricks, and sense of humor. Actually had me laughing out loud at sausage digits. Well, for quoting what I wrote in the description, you will now be inducted to the Pirate Hall of Fame. Horological Pirate Hall of Fame. Even I keep forgetting that. Horological Pirate Hall of Fame. You will now be inducted in the Horological Pirate Hall of Fame for paying attention to the descriptions. So, for all of you out there, if you keep paying attention to the descriptions and what I'm going to quote there, well, let me know. You could be included in this Hall of Fame. Peter Campbell says, I'm afraid that the Casioak makes me think of the Ferrari Kate cars built on a Pontiac Fiero chassis. That being said, I'm happy with the stock Casio. AP styling doesn't do anything for me. And yeah, and he talks about other things about the previous show. And yeah, that's fine too. That's another area where I think I mentioned that in the video that many of the people are divided with these Casioak mods. He just really wants to stick to the stock design, which is also quite admirable. Many of us are quite tempted to mod these watches regardless of the virtue of sticking to the original design of the creators, and that's something that I cannot fault anyone, but for us or certain people like us who want to design, to tinker things, we naturally want to mod stuff, and that's not a popular opinion or a popular take on these watches, especially for collectors. So that's fine also from Peter Campbell. Wow, we're a generally positive show so far. Melvin Ramirez says, another great content as always. If you're only allowed to grab one G-Shock, what would it be and why? Well, to me, it's that gold and blue MRG that was released a couple of years ago. That is the one that I'm going to uh, be grabbing if you want me to grab one. It has all of the handcrafting that I ever wanted. It's gold. I know it's kind of precious, but it's also tough. It's one of those rare G-Shocks that actually exudes a lot of the Japanese personality and spirit in it, and that's something that I think represents a G-Shock and its technology. And if there's one model, that's it for me, G-Shock. There's also that $75,000 pure gold G-Shock Square, but that's not my thing. This one has more of the artisan flavor to it. Jinxies says, why is Damascus versus the Seaward Trident Pro 300? Who's your winner in that fight for the wrist? To me, it's the Damascus. But there's a caveat there. The Trident from Christopher Ward may end up being the more legendary or iconic of the two because of what Christopher Ward is trying to do now, especially with the alliance in the British watch community. That's what they're contributing to, and they're starting to really break over that microbrand, if not already the microbrand barrier, unlike the Wise Damascus. So in the end, any watch from Christopher Ward may be more valuable than the Damascus. So why did I choose the Damascus? Well, I'm a sucker for 904L steel. The luster of a 904L steel and the warmth on their polishing is something that I cannot compare with a stainless steel. Many would argue that the difference is so minute that you couldn't even tell, but I could tell. I could tell that there's a different brilliance to a 904L steel compared to a 316L steel, and I think that alone, plus the price of the Damascus is a worthy contender against the CW or the Christopher Ward Trident Pro 300. Maybe if it's not a Trident Pro 300, maybe I would have punched the needle back to Christopher Ward's ring or team. Blackheart says, how can you compare a stainless steel band from Casio to some knockoff from AliExpress, not to mention the added thickness, obvious flaws taking the originality away? Well, this comment is just begging for me to ban Blackhawk from the show, but I'm not gonna ban him. I think he has more virtue here. I think we're going to title this show as the Virtue Show, because I think Blackheart here has more virtue than many of us have, because he holds high the standard and the origins of the brand to the point that he couldn't take it, that someone would emulate even just the bracelet to get satisfaction in their Casio or in their G-Shock. But let me defend my position here. This mod that he was talking about, or the suggestion that he was talking about, was based on the mod that I made. That I had that GM2100, that is the metal covered Casioak without the bracelet as of yet. When I had that, there was no GMB 2100 yet, or the full metal Casioak. That was not released yet. So in my desire to actually get that on my wrist, I purchased an aftermarket bracelet from AliExpress, which is so sacrilegious to Blackheart, which I don't blame him. That's his standard. That's fine. And to him, that is heresy. And that's okay, because he has a far deeper integrity to the brand. But let me just say this, if the GMB Full Metal Casio was released before I purchased that AliExpress bracelet, maybe I would have not purchased it in the first place either. Maybe I would have, honestly, I could see myself really just putting the money into a GMB 2100. Not to mention, it has the tough solar and Bluetooth functionality. And also, yes, I agree, the bracelet for these GMB 2100s are far better than anything that the AliExpress bracelet could offer. It has a better finish, and I don't know if about that thickness. It could possibly be thinner than the one that's being sold to AliExpress. But here's another thing. I got 2 watches from that, and I kept on playing with that. That's me, the designer. I like Legos. I like constructing things. I like kit models from Japan, and like I want these customizable things for my watches. That's my playground right there. That's not for everyone, especially for collectors. I'm also a collector in a way, but I'm more of a designer and a thinker in that sense. So that's my defense. And honestly, I could go either way either. If Casio released the GMB 2100 before I was able to tinker with the GM 2100s, then I would have not bothered at all. I would have jumped straight to the full metal Casio, supporting Blackheart in the process. While we didn't cancel or we didn't ban Blackheart, we are banning someone from the show. So hear me out. Cosmodoc gets into the comment section once again. I think you would be the right viewer to make a funny video about the new Shakira song where she sings about her ex having left her for a cheaper model and compares this with swapping Rolex for a Casio, to which PK replied that a Casio is for life. Okay, so now let's get a little bit more serious about this. So Shakira registered to many of the watch tingles in the web for her comments on the new song that she just released because of that diss track for her ex-partner Gerard Piqué. As a short context, these two were a couple for 12 years. They had 2 children, and they had quite a private life for many Hollywood or celebrity standards up until Shakira released this quite public diss track of her former partner who supposedly left her for a younger woman or younger model, according to the news. Now, in Shakira's song, she referenced Piqué as trading a Rolex for a Casio. So Rolex being Shakira and Casio, this other lady or other woman that Piqué left her for. Now, as a fan of Rolex, I hope you're not offended by Shakira's use of Rolex in this context, because quite frankly, it is a luxury status brand, and I myself own one, and I bought it for the same reasons. But for a Casio fan, you shouldn't be offended either, because you're buying a Casio to wear it for the job. It gets the job done. You're not wearing it to flex or to create a status symbol, although depending on the model, you could actually do that with a Casio too. But in general, you're buying a Casio because it's cheap, it's affordable, it works, and it lasts forever, like what Gerard Piqué says, it lasts for life. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the same situation that he'll be in if he'll be with this woman for life in reality, seeing how these famous people and celebrities, how their relationships last. So that's left to be seen. But in either case, these are just accessories to the man and to the woman, not the man or the woman. Oftentimes though, we objectify ourselves or other people like Shakira did in this song, or maybe like this doofus here in his poor attempt for a joke of a video a couple of weeks ago. But in both cases, they could learn from their errors and henceforth make better people of themselves by making their path straight. Now let me put my preachy pirate hat here for a moment and allow me to expose my beliefs on this matter. While this pirate can just take it to the chin, lick his wounds, and tell less jokes to make his paths straight, Shakira and Piqué may have more serious repercussions ahead of them. these two or these four are as a family for 12 years, and that will now be broken apart by this separation. And the ones that typically suffer from these kinds of separations are the children. Now, this is a classic case, though, of the lack of commitment. You have to keep in mind, these two people are in a relationship for 12 years, and you're telling me that they couldn't find a way to commit to each other in those 12 years? This is really a problem when we human beings who are created or designed to be together with a bond of union such as marriage as a moral glue to their relationship. That's what makes us humans unique and not like animals. And I believe because of that lack of commitment, that we in return, now taking off my pirate preachy hat and going back to the watch talk, we, on the other hand, as watch collectors and watch enthusiasts, may actually have more of that fiber of commitment in our beings than these two people. Because if you're affected by the use of the Rolex name and Casio's branding in this track, you may actually have more of a commitment to these brands than Shakira has for her ex-partner. And that is the sad truth that these famous people are facing right now. And they're not only hurting themselves, but they're also hurting other people. And why do we know that? Well, Shakira herself said that she didn't want to marry Piqué because she wanted him to be on his toes all the time, like a blissful romance that's perpetrated by popular media. But again, that is their personal, private decisions, and we're not in the business to be meddling with those. But their relationship clearly shows there's this lack of commitment, a commitment that they could have learned from us watch enthusiasts, because we can commit to a brand to a certain degree, but not to the point of sacrificing everything else. Because we commit to Rolex and we commit to G-Shock or Casio as far as our loose change can take us. Because that's what hopefully many of us are doing. To get to the next piece, we just sacrifice our loose change. But these two, Gerard Piqué and Shakira, sacrifice not only their time, energy, but also their children because of the lack of commitment. And because of that, we're going to walk both of them to the plank, and hopefully they dive to the shark-infested waters because of what they did. Hopefully they learn and they actually in time get married and lead better lives, and hopefully the children survive this kind of ordeal. But for now, they're banned from the show. Like they even watch the show, come on. Who are we kidding here? But you watch enthusiasts, you have better commitments, and I salute you all. And now it's time for Mr. Zelos. I think any commenter with butt and or monkey in the name should be treated with great suspicion. Just saying. And that is our show. See you next time. To watch my PRX video and the Seiko 5 GMT